Welcome back, baseball fans. A 1981-84 off-season look at the trade carousel as teams are having their winter meetings or trying to get the proper number of keepers, waves, and retires. We started this process in the last video, and we looked at the first 8 teams, and it was just a hurricane of trades. Just an amazing array of Hall of Famers. We saw Ozzie Smith and Raleigh Fingers and Bruce Sutter and Ted Simmons and Don Sutton and Carlton Fisk and Freddie Lynn and Willie Hernandez and Rod Carew all moving around the league with still plenty. That's only 8 of the 32 teams making moves in one of the most active off seasons I've ever put together. Maybe it's this kind of the grand finale of this timeline, perhaps. This is the 81-84, and beyond 84, don't know what happens after this in the following years, because that 85 card set, of course, changes. Strat-O-Matic changes the format of the cards. I have the set, I just prefer not to use it. I kind of want it to stop after 84, so we'll see what happens in the following year in the Fall League. But we looked at the moves the first 8 teams made. Tonight we're going to go through the next group of 8 as the teams try and get down to the proper number of players to keep, put on waivers, and retire. 4, 2, and 2. The column here, these numbers that are over or under, they have to correct that before the draft starts. We still have, in the first 8, for instance, we still have Seattle as 6 guys, Dodgers have 5. So we still have more moves to be made up top, but we're moving into the middle now. We got teams 9 through 16. These are teams that didn't finish in last place, but didn't go to the playoffs. They're in that purgatory of mediocrity where you don't know if they're going up or down for high draft picks or playoff appearances. So we begin the night with Pittsburgh. Started the process at 4:03:01, and they are at the proper process. Let's take a look at the Pirates. They made one move, I believe. And they're not very active in this. This is not a good time to be a Pirate right now. But who knows? We could make some deals. So, in a very inconsequential move, eventually, by the end of the broadcast, when we're at the very end, a lot of teams will be trading a waivered player for a retired player. Neither will participate for those teams. They're just getting the accounting proper. Normally, let's go take a look at the reason why a trade like this is made. Pittsburgh started the process 4:03:01. Atlanta started the process 4:01:03. They call each other, flip the opposite number, and end up at 4:02:02. Everybody's happy and they're ready to go. And frankly, there's no compensation involved because these players aren't kept. Squires is on the waiver list. Rodriguez is on a retired list. Both can be drafted by any team. No tokens involved. So Pittsburgh basically pauses after that minor move. Then you have Colorado. This is a curious trade. Colorado and Detroit had the rights to Johnny Grubb and Steve Kemp and traded them for each other. It's interesting. You very seldom see the same positional talent. You're looking at left-handed hitting left fielders traded for each other. Normally, that's why not just keep the guy you have? Why trade for somebody else? Well, I guess Grubb was a Tiger in '84, and Kemp moved off of the Tigers. And the other move Colorado made, you're going to start seeing this as well. The harsh reality of no one's going to want Frank Pastore. So he goes from keeper simply to waivers. While I got you, I'm going to read off the remaining list of players that I originally put on the trade block. And we've had some blockbuster trades. You saw them. You saw them earlier. You saw Simmons, and you saw Ozzie Smith and Fingers, and Bannister Pachorik going to, and Sutton, you know, and Willie Wilson and Fisk and Lynn, blah blah blah. This is what's currently on the trade block. I have it written down, so it's Rick Dempsey, Tommy John, Mike Easler, Vida Blue, Dave Bergman, Jim Wolford, Wayne Gross, Rusty Staub, David Palmer, Jeff Burrows, Gary Matthews, John Mayberry, Jerry Remy, Rick Russell, Keith Moreland, Tom Hume, Dave Collins, Steve Garvey, Bobby Castillo, Gaylord Perry, and Al Holland. There's some nice players there, and a lot of those players are no longer in their prime when you hear a Hall of Famer like Garvey or Gaylord Perry, but it's the next wave. We always say this. The first day of free agency, it's everybody gets the credit card out, maxes it out, and you saw what's happened. But now the teams are starting to realize, oh boy, let's wait a little bit and find something in our budget. And so in the last maneuver, this is where Colorado sort of opened Pandora's box and said, you know what? Nobody's going to want Pastore, so we're going to have to keep him and move him to waivers. And when Colorado did that, they went from 50102 to the proper math 40202. Next up, it's going to continue. Florida has David Palmer, and unfortunately, David Palmer misses some years. He doesn't get it together until later of the decade. So now he goes from keeper to waiver for Florida, and that makes them 50201 to 40301. They're almost correct. Let's keep going. The next team is Baltimore, and they, oh boy, sometimes maybe not trading is the way to go. In the case of Baltimore, instead of looking for a trade partner for Rich Dower and Rick Dempsey, that means that they're gone. Somebody has them. In this attempt, they're simply putting them on waivers, daring the rest of baseball to go sign these guys, because Baltimore wants these guys back. They believe that they're going to go on waivers and they're going to get them back. And that's sort of you have to look at it as a good case for Baltimore of a team that's very wealthy. They got some great talent in Baltimore. Let's go take a look at the Orioles. The reason why Dower and Dempsey went to waivers is because Kenny Singleton still has another big year left in him. Jim Dwyer has some really great platoon years left in him from 82 to 84. 900 OPS years. Scott McGregor and Flanagan can steal deal in the years of 81 and 83. So that's 4 quality keepers for Baltimore. Shed no tears for them if they have to let these 2 guys go. So that's the risk you take. But if the word on the street is that, hey, people are just dumping keepers, then it comes to be like the waiver list gets to be a desirable list now. Before it used to be the dregs of the roster. Now it's a good place to go for talent. Baltimore, by the way, they are at 40301. Next up, the Padres. Did they continue to make moves? Yeah. Yep. They got the words come down. This is that lull in the draft. You have the fire at the beginning and then the lull. Gaylord Perry, I mean, he really has he is 40 million years old at this point. Eventually he pitches to the Mariners and he's got like a 4.40 ERA. Broderick Perkins of the great 1980. He's a 270, 280 hitting first baseman in the platoon the rest of the time. That's just not enough juice to get a starting gig, you'd think. And the Padres, don't worry about the Padres. Remember, they actually looking pretty good right now. The Padres, they're sitting 4-3-0-1, but they got Salazar, still has a 300 year left in him. Gary Templeton's going to hit 280, maybe 300. I can't forget. They can go 81. The 81 Templeton is still He's still a Cardinal in 81. They can get that Cardinal card of 81, which is a high batting average. They still got Manny Trio. He also has a good 81. And they got Bruce Sutter in their bullpen. So, and the only pitcher they have to replace is Gaylord Perry. They already have 3 lefties: Tim Lawler, Dave Dravecki, and Gary Lucas. Lefties are hard to find. They got 3 of them. So the Padres are in good shape. Suter's a nice piece if you're thinking 84 World Series instead of Gossage. Pretty neat stuff. Kind of happy with how that shook out. All right, back to the draft order. 2 more teams, and then we're going to have to call it tonight. It's been a slow night in trading. The Expos. Well, this worked out really well. I got to say, I'm really happy when things fall perfectly. Need and trade value all worked out. The Padres had 1 more keeper than they needed. 2 things happened. Let's go to the beginning of the Expos. All right, in the beginning of the offseason, they wanted to trade Larry Parrish, but here's the reality. They lost Tim Wallach. The Expos won the World Series 2 years ago, and the price of that was losing Tim Wallach. He fell into the rival Houston Astros and then to the Dodgers. Very desirable player, can play first and third. So that means that they're going to hitch their wagon to Larry Parrish through the end of his career. Larry Parrish is a third baseman that was traded to Texas to play right field. And in this recreation, they're just going to hold on to him. And when we look at the fixed Expos, the fixed Expos are keeping Cromartie, Doug Flynn, Larry Parrish, and Rudy May. So the trade that took place, they were looking for somebody to take Scott Sanderson off their hands. And guess what? It was a team that only had 3 keepers and needed to replace a right-handed starting pitcher who went on waivers. And he played for the Cubs. Scott Sanderson from the Expos to the Cubs. I love it when history matches what I'm doing. And if you look, I got Sanderson up here. So Sanderson has a nice long career, folks. He pitches to 96, I think. Yeah. But look here. He goes from the Expos to the Cubs in 84. But you also have some nice years in 81 for the Cubs. The Cubs can steal that year. They can steal a year on 3 days rest, or they can steal the 84 year. So Scott Sanderson goes to the Cubs a little sooner than he actually did. And it helps both teams. The money, the Expos get a draft token for the Cubs. So that you'll see here, the Expos get a buck, get a token. Cubs lose 1. But a nice little investment for the Expos. And the final move, I believe, that was the final move for tonight. The final team, the White Sox were on the clock. They can still make moves. Let's look at their before and after. The White Sox started this offseason wanting to keep Oscar Gamble, Jim Morrison, Britt Burns, Ross Baumgarten, Andy Hassler. That's a lot of names, not a lot of good ones. Britt Burns is a lock. That was a lock. The other guys marked for trades. I think the White Sox knocked it out of the park. They got really close to that 83 playoff team with the exception of a couple players. They couldn't land Greg Luzinski. They couldn't land Julio Cruz. But they got Tom Paciorek. They got Floyd Bannister. The keepers are Britt Burns, Floyd Bannister, Jeff Jones, a righty reliever to replace Mike Proley, a righty reliever who's gone on waivers. I mean, look at this rotation now. You got Lamar Hoyt, Britt Burns, Richard Dodson, Floyd Bannister. Cherry picked their best years. That's one of the best pitching staffs in baseball. Need a lefty reliever. They're kind of pricey, but they're going to have to get one before the draft. They'll have Harold Baines in right. They got nice Chris Chambliss card at first. Paciorek in left. They got Fisk catching. Lamar Johnson DH. Rudy Law. Great leadoff hitter. bad defense. Rusty Kuntz can be his defensive replacement. They still have Buck Martinez as a great backup catcher with a negative arm. A couple shortstops put on waivers. Mario Mendoza, Stan Pappy, while Craig Reynolds sticks around. And Eric Soderholm is retired. So the infield is still a rocky place for the White Sox. They might need one more offseason to get an infield. They got Chambliss and pray for rain. They don't have a second baseman. They don't have a third baseman. And if you want to call Craig Reynolds a shortstop, you certainly can. He will go out there with a glove and we'll see what happens. So that's what the White Sox look like. They're going to pause. They spent a lot of money thus far. They spent 2 of their 5 tokens already. So with that, we have looked at 16 teams. The key number is the first number, 4. That's the number we want to get to. The middle and end numbers, the 2s and the 2s, they can get to through general accounting purposes. They can just simply move back and forth between the retirement and waiver pools at the very end of the draft as a reconciliation. But right now, the top 16 look pretty good, with Seattle and the Dodgers having a bonus. The Dodger bonus, let's look at the Seattle and Dodger bonuses. And we're like, oh, who are they holding on to? Well, Seattle, it's a case of they don't know who to keep. They got Kingman, Sam Mejias, Jim Morrison, Ross Baumgarten, Glenn Abbott, and Andy Hassler. They have 4 left-handed pitchers. They can't go into a draft with it. They got Baumgarten, Matt Young, Andy Hassler, Brian Clark. Somebody's got to go. So they're holding on to these assets and waiting until somebody calls for a left-handed pitcher. Sam Mejias might have to go on waivers after all this. Good defensive outfielder. It's about 280. Just a singles hitter, though. Jim Morrison's a nice trade chip they got from the White Sox because he has really nice years with the Pirates in 83 and 84. Do you keep him or do you trade him? And the other team is the Dodgers, and it's Steve Garvey. And you're wondering, Garvey? Like, yeah. Remember, the Dodgers got Tim Wallach. He would not play. He would have been an expo. But they'll put those 28 homers at first base for a Steve Garvey with declining power and ship Garvey out of there. Dusty Baker's coming back. Bill Russell, unfortunately, has to come back because he plays his whole career with the Dodgers. Nobody else really wants him. Bobby Castillo, they could trade and keep Garvey. Bobby Castillo pitched on 3 days rest for the Twins, and they want Steve Howe. So I'm thinking it comes down to Castillo or Garvey. Do the Dodgers keep Garvey for 1 more year? They probably do. The reality is the Padres, they did clear the deck from Broderick Perkins, and they moved off of Tamargo and Walkenfuss. So the first baseman for the Padres is presently not there. So they could make a deal with they could send. Well, they're not going to send Manny Trio to the Dodgers. Dodgers have Steve Sachs and Davey Lopes. They're not going to send Templeton to the Dodgers. Not Salazar to the Dodgers. No, that doesn't make sense either. Their outfield's full with Baker and Gibson and so forth. Of course, the Dodgers could trade Kirk Gibson back to the Tigers. They stole him in the draft out of the farm system back in '80 before he made it big. And the Tigers have spent a lot of money. Well, let's consider that for a moment. 81 Gibson to the Tigers. How convenient would that be? You'd have to send the Dodgers an 81 player. Do the Dodgers want Barry Evans, Cesar Geronimo, Kelvin Moore, Jack Morris, Milt Wilcox, or Tom Brennan? Probably not any of those. Barry Evans is a 300 hitting third baseman, though. But they got Ron Say, they got Tim Wallach. Geronimo, Kelvin Moore. Ugh. Morris and Wilcox are locks for the Tigers. Tom Brennan. I doubt the Dodgers need a right-handed starting pitcher. They are so deep. And the Dodgers aren't exactly stupid. They'll probably just hold on to Gibson. Yeah, they got Bird Hooten. Well, oddly enough, they could keep Castillo and put him in the rotation. With Sutton gone, with Valenzuela gone, with Jerry Royce gone, you're left with Bird Hooten, Rick Honeycutt, Dave Stewart. Yeesh. They could trade Kirk Gibson for Brennan and some money and a draft token. Let's see. Reggie Smith's on waivers. Who do you got in the outfield? You got Baker, Garvey. There's probably some rookies coming up in 83 or 84 for the Dodgers. Mike Marshall, maybe. Mike Marshall goes to the Dodgers. Something like that. Anyway, kind of going over here. I didn't want to go too deep. We've gotten through 16 teams, which is all you need to know, folks. We'll pick this up next time with the next group of 8 as we get closer and closer to the drafting point and a place to pause in the 81-84 offseason. Thanks for checking this out. We'll see you next time.